How's it going, trainers? We're inching toward the end of the current Go Battle League season, but before it ends, we've got one more brand new cup to analyze, being the Sunshine Cup. So put on your sunglasses, because we're breaking down the brightest choices and some great teams to try out. Welcome back, everyone. The Sunshine Cup will go from May 10th until May 17th this season. The format will be limited to Pokemon with the normal, fire, grass, or ground type, with Charizard banned for balancing purposes. So, we're going to break down a few Pokemon from each type, and then go over some sample teams to try out. Starting off first with the normal type, we've got our heavy hitters for this cup. Without many prominent fighting or steel types, normal will be a very good type in this cup. Up first, we've got Noctowl, and are you surprised? Noctowl has been a top tier player in the Open Great League for a few seasons now, so of course it'll be great here too. It's bulky, has decent coverage, and charges to its strong moves relatively quickly. Enough said. Next up, we have another big Great League player, being Vigoroth, who often sees major use in cups, and this one is no exception. You'll probably know it well by now, modest bulk, and the incredible fast move counter, and the spammy body slam as well. It's honestly Noctowl and Vigoroth though who I expect to be the two biggest players in this cup. They do each have their counters, but they're both flexible and can take down a lot of their counters with an energy advantage or additional shields. I will talk about how I expect this cup to play out a little later though. The final normal choice we've got is Noctowl, who plays remarkably similar to Vigoroth. It's got a strong fighting fast move, body slam for spammy damage, and good bulk. Double kick will make it a little more spammy though, at the cost of less fast move pressure compared to counter, and payback gives you some different coverage than Bulldoze. It's another great choice and can work very well if you use it and Vigoroth in a team together. And of course, there's plenty of other great normal type choices like Obstagoon and Miltank. Moving on to the fire types though, we have Victini up first. Now Victini previously saw some use in the Psychic Cup, and with there not being too many water, dark, or ghost types, it's another great choice in this cup with its quick charging quick attack and devastating V-Create. Though unlike Psychic Cup, I'd say it's more desirable to run it with two charged moves. I'd personally recommend Psychic for some additional coverage against other Pokemon, but going double fire with V-Create and Overheat is still a viable option too. Just be wary of its frailness and know when to throw its V-Creates. Next up, we have Ninetales, who has a few different ways you can run it. If you're running the Shadow version, I'd recommend Ember for more consistent fast move pressure, but if you're running the normal version, I'd opt for Fire Spin so you can be a little spammier with Weather Ball. As for the secondary move, it's very similar to Victini, where you can opt for the stronger Overheat or the Psychic charged move for coverage. In this cup, that coverage is mostly for the other fire types like Ninetales or Blaziken, but I do think the extra power will help Ninetales more in this case, so I'd personally choose Overheat for it. Lastly for the fire type is Magcargo, who I think will be a bit of a spice pick, but one that could prove to be a solid anti-meta pick. It's still going to fear various Pokemon with fighting moves like Vigoroth and Obstagoon, but it can comfortably take down Noctowl, Victini, and the other flying and fire Pokemon with ease. If you plan a good team around it to guard its weaknesses, I think it'll do very well here, but it may depend on how the meta unfolds. And beyond these three, there's obviously some other great choices for the fire type like Alolan Marowak and Blaziken. Up next, we have the ground type, and we'll start off with Gliscor. Now, as we'll see with the other ground types, a lot of them have subtypings that are very beneficial in this cup. For Gliscor, its flying type will be a big help, letting it resist Double and Vigoroth's fighting fast moves. From there, it's either the spammy Night Slash or Earthquake for power. There's also not that many water or ice types in this cup, so that's a big plus. Though, speaking of water types, Swampert comes next, and are you surprised? We all know Swampert's an incredibly strong PvP Pokemon with a solid typing and the spammy Hydro Cannon. With this cup in particular, it's one of the few water types, which can be great for striking down the various ground and fire types that we've mentioned before this. But lastly for ground, we have Nidoqueen. Now Nidoqueen has fallen from grace a little bit with the Poison Fang nerf, but I think it's still a good choice here. Besides the other ground types in Magcargo, Poison largely goes unresisted in this meta, and it resisting fighting moves will help it be a good counter to both Vigoroth and Noctowl. And even where Nidoqueen doesn't win a matchup, I think setting up your next Pokemon with the opponent's defenses dropped will be really good in this cup. Of course, there's more ground types to use too. The ever-present Galarian Stunfisk and Whiscash, for example, will be great choices. And lastly, we move on to the grass type, and I'd actually say it's the weakest type in the cup. While you'd think it would have some use with ground being a type, as we just discussed, Gliscor and Nidoqueen are both good choices because of their subtypings, which makes grass less effective. That coupled with flying types like Pidgeot and Noctowl being big players, and grass just doesn't look too good. Of course, we've got a couple good choices still. Up first is Abomasnow, who excels mainly because it nullifies a lot of its weaknesses I just spoke of with Ice. It's still weak to flying, but Ice still lets it combat that weakness, along with Nidoqueen and especially Gliscor. But Abomasnow will still take heavy hits from Obstagoon, Vigoroth, and Dubwool, so definitely build its teammates around resisting fighting moves. And speaking of resisting fighting moves, Tropius makes for another solid choice because it does just that. I'm not sure if it has enough going for it for me to use it, but I do think resisting fighting and being able to dish out strong neutral damage to those normal types with Leaf Blade is nice, so it's definitely a decent pick. Now other grass types could find use too, like Trevenant, Jumpluff, and Hisuian Electrode, but again, I feel like for the most part grass is at a disadvantage in this meta. Before we move on to teams though, I did want to make a note of a quirk to this cup. This cup has a lot of close wins and losses, so even something like Vigoroth, who may lose to Noctowl, can easily flip the matchup if a little more energy is saved up. This is a meta where you definitely want to know your move counts and keep track of your opponent's energy. But let's kick off the sample teams with team number 1, which features Abomasnow, Noctowl, and Swampert. Abomasnow does have its fair share of counters, but I definitely think its ice and grass moves are enough to threaten a decent chunk of the meta, and where it fails, Dubwool makes for an excellent safe swap capable of taking down Noctowl and other threats, and Swampert often makes for a good closer with spamminess and good coverage. For team number 2 we have Gliscor, Obstagoon, and Vigoroth. Now Gliscor has the capabilities to take down a lot of the meta with its wide coverage, but it'll obviously still struggle when it comes to Swampert and Abomasnow. However, Obstagoon and Vigoroth make for a very strong backline that offers equally strong coverage, especially with their bulk backing them up and the oppressive counter. For our last team though, we have Victini, Galarian Stunfisk, and Tropius. Now this team is a bit of an odd one, where you can get into quite the pickle if you don't predict your opponent's backline. However, each Pokemon here covers a wide range of different Pokemon in the meta. Tropius is mainly here to handle Swampert and Obstagoon that would give the other two a hard time, but I do also think Pidgeot could be a viable substitute for it, with its Feather Dances being a great tool and Brave Bird being extremely powerful. I'd probably run the team with Pidgeot to give you a better chance against Noctowl, but it does depend on what Pokemon are popular throughout the week. But of these teams, which do you think you'll try out? Or do you have an entirely different team you're going to use? Let me know down in the comments below. For me, I'm leaning toward team number 2. And if you like this guide, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss our future guides. This season may be almost over, but I'm sure we'll see a bunch of new cups next season, and you can be sure we'll be here to analyze them. Until next time though, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Take care.